Hello, this is Susan Woods, your self appointed Black Lives Matter investigator. Thank you so much for your time. In this video message, I would like to share with you part two of an interview that Patrisse Khan-Cullors, one of the three founding members of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation and its former executive director, had with Marc Lamont Hill on his YouTube channel. During this interview, Patrisse said that Black Lives Matter is not a charity, among other things. So I would like to give you an opportunity to listen to part two of the interview that Marc Lamont Hill facilitated with Patrisse Khan-Cullors. So just one moment as I transition to the video. Thank you so much for your patience. As you know, I like to show evidence of what I'm doing. So I'm going to transition over to the video message so that you can hear the conversation between Patrisse Khan-Cullors and Marc Lamont Hill, in which she states, among other things, that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is not a charity. And here we go.
Year to distribute to the community and distribute to other chapters as well as other Black-led organizations. One of the big critiques, though, that has emerged in recent months has been that Black Lives Matter as an organization, the BLMGNF, has not distributed the money properly. We saw a call, for example, when it was announced that $90 million had come into Black Lives Matter over the last year. And by the way, you're not the only ones who've received large amounts of money. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund also received, I believe, $70 million. We've seen other groups get large amounts of money after the uprisings that took place after the killing of George Floyd. But when you all got the $90 million, immediately people said, hey, wait a minute, we need a slice of this. We saw activists in Ferguson, for example, Tory Russell and Mike Brown Sr. say, hey, we need $20 million as a restorative act. We're not asking for something. This is what we are owed based on what we've contributed to the movement and what our needs are for our organizations right at ground zero. When you hear critiques like that and demands like that, how do you make sense of them? How do you respond to them?
I think it's hard. I want to remind people that we just got this money 6-8 months ago, not that long ago. And in that time, we've been able to distribute dollars really quickly. And I do want to say that, our community members do need resources. Our community members do need support. Black Lives Matter, while we are a grant-making body and an action think tank, we are not a charity. We are a power-building body. And so it's important that people understand the difference between a charity and a power-building body. I also want to say I did meet with Mike Brown, and I met with his wife, Callie, and that was actually that meeting was created by Uncle Bobby and Auntie B with the Love Not Blood campaign, and a truly restorative and transformative justice process. It was really powerful. They sat us down, and you can imagine, right? Someone who's demanded $20 million from me and the organization. They sat us down, they met us here in California, and we had a really amazing conversation about what is needed, how we can actually support, and that people don't have to leverage demands against us online. People can contact us. We are accessible. And so that's what I have to say to folks. I do understand the need for resources. I do understand why people expect that from us. But I think it's important that people recognize that there are other places that they can also get grants. There are other places that they can also get resources. And most importantly, our target should be the United States government. Our target should be calling on Congress to pass reparations. Our target should be calling on Congress to pass the Breathe Act. Our target should be local law enforcement, local city council. We aren't the government. We are an organization that has always fought for Black lives, and we will always fight for Black lives.
I think one of the challenges is the language of movement. When people hear the language of movement, when people hear grassroots, when people hear community, they're thinking of a very particular thing, which inspires calls for mutual aid, for funding, for distributing resources, Panther style, as opposed to in what in many ways has become a fairly traditional organization. Do you see that as a, if not a contradiction, at least a tension in the work you're doing and the language that's being used to describe the work you're doing?
Yes, I think it's a tension for all of us. And I think it's a conversation that every Black organization that received millions of dollars should be talking about. We have been courageous to have the conversation. Some may think it was dumb of us to be transparent about how much money we received. But I think it was important for us to tell the community, hey, this is the money we received. And I would encourage other Black-led organizations to also share the money they received and talk about how we're using it, talk about how we define the use of resources in this moment. It is a tension, but it doesn't have to be a place where we fight each other and harm each other. We don't have to go down that route. We literally can work together in this moment because we always say this, we are all we got.
I have a somewhat philosophical question for you in this minute or so I have in this segment. But I remember when I wrote my book, Nobody, which dealt with Black state violence. Part of what I thought about was, while I wrote this book myself and I am giving speeches about this book, the money that I'm earning is happening because Black people died. And so I had to think about my moral responsibility to those people. What's my responsibility to Mike Brown or to Sandra Bland, et cetera? Even though you have not taken a dollar from the Black Lives Matter organization in a salary, your prominence, your name, the speeches you give, the studio deals you get are all connected to the fact that there's so much Black trauma and Black death. How does that fact inform how you think about your own personal spending, your own personal politics, and what your responsibility is to the community beyond the base?
It's a great question, and I think about it every day. I don't think it's a question that any of us can just have one answer for. But I'll start with saying that, Mark, you know this, and many people know this. I started this work because of my own family, because of what happened to my brother, who was tortured and abused by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. I started organizing at 16 because I needed an outlet. I needed to express the rage and the disappointment I had in the system. And that led me to being a community organizer. And the role of a community organizer is to help build power. It's to help build power of those of us that are most marginalized. And so I am that family member. That's me. I am the person who's been impacted by the state. I was the person, and I continue to be that person who shows up for my own Black family who's been impacted and other Black families. And I think as long as we live in a capitalist system, it's going to be a tension. And so my job and the job of organizations like Black Lives Matter and so many other Black-led organizations is that we transform the system so we don't have any more families dealing with what I dealt with. So we don't have any more families dealing with harm and violence every single day.
Are you looking for a security company in North
Well,
Carolina? Founded in 2002,
there you have it.
police serves Raleigh, Durham, and Charlotte, North.
There you have it. That's Patrisse Khan-Cullors' statement, everybody. And I'm not going to dwell on the statement. There are many, um, I believe, ridiculous things that she said. And Marc Lamont Hill pretty much allowed her to control the entire interview. I was not impressed with his interview style at all. He didn't ask hard questions. Again, he allowed her to control the interview. He even tried to cushion her by mentioning the NAACP Legal Defense Fund receiving $70 million in the wake of the George Floyd murder. But what does that have to do with the conversation that he's having with Patrisse Khan-Cullors regarding the $90 million that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation received in the wake of the George Floyd killing, and her not answering a question about that because he didn't pose one. But what I wanted to focus on again is the one thing that she said regarding Black Lives Matter is not a charity. You heard her state that Black Lives Matter is not a charity. That is not true. So that's the part that I want to hone in on for the rest of this video message. Black Lives Matter, the Global Network Foundation, for which Patrisse Khan-Cullors was a founder and a former executive director, is a charity, and I can prove it to you. This is a copy of the top part of the determination letter that the IRS sent to the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation Incorporated, dated December the 2nd, 2020. The employer identification number is 824862489. If you go to irs.gov and click on charities, you can type in this employer identification number to see for yourself that this is a public charity. The person to contact for any questions regarding this determination letter is Mitch Steele. His ID number is shown and his telephone number is shown here on this letter. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation uses an accounting period that ends on December the 31st. That is significant because it tells us that their Form 990 information return is due on May 15th each year. Because the Form 990 information return is always due 5 months and 15 days after an accounting period ends. The Form 990 information return is what nonprofit organizations use to show how they used the money the prior year. It is an income statement, if you will, that shows revenues and expenses. Highlighted in blue, I have the public charity status. Highlighted in blue is the public charity status. Remember, Patrisse said that Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is not a charity. Yes, it is. And it's shown and it's proven here that it is a charity. This is the determination letter that shows the public charity status of 170B1AVI. And I'm going to explain what those numbers mean in just one moment. But I wanted to again emphasize that she is simply not telling the truth when she says that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is not a charity. It is a charity, which means that people do have the right to request money from this public charity. They are required to file the appropriate Form 990 each year. The Form 990 that they file, the type of Form 990 that they file is dependent upon the amount of revenues generated in the prior year. The IRS awarded the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation 501c3 status on August 28th, 2020. It's not unusual for the IRS to award exemption and then send a letter out a couple of months later. Contribution deductibility is yes, you can write off your contributions to this organization, which further proves that it is a public charity and it has a status that allows you to write off your donations. Before the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation applied for and received 501c3 status, Patrisse Khan-Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opa Tomate, the three founders, stated that they would never be governed by the IRS or any other governmental agency because they didn't want to have to report to a governmental agency. So what happened? Could it be they're trying to create some type of credibility after receiving so much money last year, 2020? The date of exemption was August 28th, 2020, which means they had to apply for exemption the early part of 2020. I don't know what type of application they used to apply. They could have used the Form 1023 standard version or the Form 1023 EZ. I don't know. They also could have requested expedited processing. But nevertheless, whatever the reason or whatever form they use, I believe they did it because they wanted to have a look as if they are being governed, which this is way after the fact. The money was already coming in by August 28th, 2020. Another thing I want to share with you is regarding the public charity status that I said I was going to come back to. When a person applies for 501c3 status using a Form 1023, application for recognition of exemption, the long version, they have to choose which type of public charity status they want to use for their nonprofit organization in the application so that the determination letter will show which type of charitable status they selected in the application process. Now, since 2010, I have completed 162 application packets using the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, the long version, for clients across the United States. The only classification that I choose for my clients is the first one that I have highlighted here. You are described in 509A1 and 170B1A VI as an organization that receives a substantial part of its financial support in the form of contributions from publicly supported organizations, from a governmental unit, or from the general public. The reason I choose this um, option each time that I complete an application is because I want my clients to have the broadest range of options in which to receive money for their organizations. I don't want them to have any type of restrictions in which they would select money or get money for their organizations or generate revenues for their organizations. So I complete part 7, foundation classification, and this is what I choose for my clients. Now it says here, part 7 is designed to classify you as an organization that is either a private foundation or a what? Or a what? Or a public charity. Public charity classification is a more common tax status than private foundation classification. If you are a private foundation, this part will further determine whether you are a private operating foundation. Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is a public charity. In this section up top here where it says Part 7 Foundation Classification, I wish the IRS would modify this form to say foundation or public charity classification. That would be easier to understand. But, Patrisse Khan-Cullors is simply not telling the truth, is the point that I'm trying to make here. In other news, according to the dailymail.com, an article published on June the 10th, 2021, exclusive, Build That Wall. Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors erects $35,000 fencing and electric gate around her new $1.4 million Topanga Canyon home she bought with cash, following backlash over her $3 million property portfolio. So apparently Patrisse is getting a little nervous about her extravagance and her inability or unwillingness to tell us where is the money. So she's opening herself up to suspicion regarding whether or not she's using Black Lives Matter resources for her own personal use. It could be easily explained if she just provides documentation to show that she is not using Black Lives Matter money for personal gain or for personal purposes, such as buying expensive property. The Daily Mail shared pictures of the fence that she's erecting around her property for protection. She's afraid, clearly, of something, of being harmed in some way, that she feels she needs to erect a fence that's $35,000. And these are just, again, some images that the Daily Mail posted on its website regarding the fencing around her $1.4 million mansion. Here's another news item that I'm going to elaborate on in another video, but I just wanted to mention it here. Someone who has been supporting my messages on YouTube sent this to my email address, and I appreciate them for sharing this information because I didn't have a clue that she had yet another organization. Patrisse Khan-Cullors has yet another organization that she's operating and generating revenue. So thank you for sharing this article, and I am going to really deep dive and provide a video for this information as well. But this is from American News, dated June the 20th, 2021. Nonprofit founded by Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors fails to disclose at least $175,000 in donations to the IRS. It's called Dignity and Power. Dignity and Power Now, rather, is a group founded by Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors, has reportedly failed to report donations totaling at least $175,000 to the IRS. And the postmillennial.com reported this story, and I'm going to create a video to expand upon this information. But I just wanted to let you know what I've learned. And again, thank you to the person who shared this information with me. I want to say thank you, everybody. I started investigating Black Lives Matter last year, last June. So it's been a full year almost now that I've been investigating the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, all of the chapters, and the 501c3 Black Lives Matter entities. I've posted my results on the YouTube channel that you can look at if you choose. But I want to let you know that I'm ending the investigations on June the 30th of this year, in a few days, because I think I've done the best that I can as far as gathering data and reporting the data and reporting the information, showing the sources of my information. It's very, very time consuming. And I do have a family, I do have a day job, and I have a consulting business. So I have a social life. So I'm a very busy person. And these investigations do take time to create. I'm not being sponsored by anybody. So I can say whatever I want to say on the videos. I can present them and however I want to present them. I can use the language that I want to use. And sometimes I do use my own hometown dialect slips in every now and then. I don't have to worry about any of that because I'm not reporting to anyone. No one is sponsoring me. No one has hired me to do anything. This is something that I wanted to do for myself and for others. Because when I started to invest in Black Lives Matter, I was very disturbed by what I learned. And that is what led to these investigations. So I want to say thank you for your support. I'm going to be uploading several videos per day going forward until June the 30th on my YouTube channel. As you all know, I am in the middle rather of a series that's entitled Why Black Lives Money is Hard to Follow. So I'm completing those videos and uploading those. So you'll be receiving or seeing a lot of videos uploaded in the next few days. But I just want to say thank you so much for your kind words and encouragement. And I'm going to compile a final report after my June 30th date when I'm going to stop doing the videos. I'm going to compile a report with all of the results of the investigation over the years, and I'm going to share that report with the FBI, with the IRS, with CEOs of major corporations that gave money to Black Lives Matter, and to major news networks, which are not even covering this massive fraud, the way in which the the Black community has been bamboozled. Nobody's even talking about that in mainstream media, and that's disappointing. So, again, thank you so much for your encouragement. I really appreciate it, and have a great day.